Okay, I've got the camera straight up the spout of the bell housing now, turned over on my stand, and if you remember early in the piece we couldn't get this top housing out because we had to drop the PTO shaft out to let the gear drop down. So before we put anything in there, we've got to put that big gear in. So that gear can sit down like that, out of the way, but we must do that first. So that gives us the opportunity now to bring this input shaft assembly in. I've got a gasket on there and it's an S41508. I don't think I've got them mixed up, but what I need you to look at now is you can see these holes here, they're not blind holes, so there's every chance you're going to leak oil up through the threads if you're not careful. So I've just got grease on the gasket for around here, but I am using Bearco R51, which is just a cheaper Loctite 515 to put on the bolts. So I'm just wiping a little bit up the threads there. Just to help it seal, and when it comes to putting the bolts on, I'll just put a little bit there as well on each thread, just so when they go up they do want to seal and we don't have the troubles of where's that oil coming from. So I'll just pop some. So this is just to clean the threads up. These didn't have washers on them, and it probably seals a lot better just with the flat surface there. So I'll set them up the top, I'll wipe the 515 off my pinkies, and this is the housing we've already assembled, so we'll try and keep that gasket nice and straight as we go in. And straight in. So the long bolts that I had for the rest of it there, I might just pop them in loosely, just as a guide really. Couple of threads in. And that's just to guide me in straight so I don't catch the gasket or anything. So a couple of threads in. I don't want to go right in and spread all the 515 out just yet. So that should let us go right back. And the main drive shaft, that's engaged with the gear, so I just need to give this a there we go, that feels nice. Pop that out of the way. A couple of bolts here. So with a couple of bolts started, we can take these fellas out. Guide bolts are just a handy thing for all sorts of jobs. That's started. And that started. So I'll put the guide bolts back over on the bench here. And we'll just get this bloke up nice and snug before the Loctite goes off. Once again, 30 to 35 foot-pounds for these fellas. If you want to do that, they just got to be firm. So by the time we get oil in the box there, that'll be all set. There we go. So this gear here, you can see that's turning, that's your PDO drive gear. That's not engaged with this bloke at all yet, and that's okay, we're happy with that. So now there's a couple of ways we can probably go here. One would be to sit this on the shaft that goes out the back. Because I have it on an angle for filming, I might actually struggle with that, keeping it in there. But look, we'll give it a go. If the tractor was just on the ground normally, I didn't have cameras playing around, it wouldn't be hard to sort out. Yeah, that just wants to roll down. So what I might do, I might make this a little bit flatter, and we'll set the camera up a bit better, just so I can get that started. Okay, so you can see I've got the shaft in from the back, and it's only just holding in there, the bloody thing. I need to have it up on a slight angle just so you can actually see what we're supposed to be looking at. So I've put the gear into the shaft here, and probably for the moment I could just put a little snap ring on there to stop it falling out, and the bearing actually comes over that gear there. So I'll try that. And I'll have to take this snap ring off again just to get the bearing retainer on, but that's okay. It should stop it falling right out the back. So that should allow us to come up here a little bit more. And yes, you can see that a lot better. So the next housing to go on is the bottom housing here. And once again, I'll try and kneel down here. Once again, it's got holes with that go straight through into the oil cavity. So there's a little bit of paint there I need to, that's it, get rid of. So I'm just popping just a little bit of 5x5 up the hole there. And I'll also put some on the bolt just to make sure there's a little bit down there. And look, whether you use gasket stuff on these or grease, or, you know, I've used 515 on them. I've used aviation, you know, the aviation cement. It's just a gasket, you know, so don't get too hung up on that. I'll use my long studs once more. And I've replaced the bearing there. It's just a matter of undoing the clip. So we do have a gasket for the back there to pick up the 4 bolts. So we turn that around so he lines up. Now some of these had O-rings and some had gaskets. There is a groove there for an O-ring, but you know, you've got the O-ring seal in there and it can still come out the back, so we'll go with a gasket on this old girl. Oops, that had to go and turn on me. These threads we usually try and have them crossways. So okay, so that there, we need to just lift this shaft up a little bit. So that can go right down in there. Then we can pop a couple of bolts in. Because what we have to do now is line the shaft and the gear up with the centre of the bearing. And we're just popping it through here so that it can't... Well, the reason we're putting something on the bolts here or nipping these up is just to hold the housing here back against it. So when we lift it and give it a bit of a bump, we should be able to draw that through. Actually, I need to back that off a bit. It's gone a bit firm. Yeah, okay. So I'll get the, geez, I hope you could see that with my, I can't see the camera. So we'll try and come forward. Okay, so you can see that shaft's held forward there. Pretty loose fit really, so what I'll do, I'll get the washer ready, so when I hold it forward, I can pop this retainer washer on and that'll hold him all in place. So need a couple of spare hands here, but that's all right. So we'll just put that up there. We'll put the washer on. We'll get that ready to go. These are troubles you have when you're filming. Hang on, I'll just slide it down a little bit again. Okay, I've got to tell you a little story. I've got the circlip on here and I've been buggering around with this for like an hour, hour and a half, just trying to work out what was going wrong. And it was my own fault. What was happening was, because I used these bolts here that were supposed to be, you know, on the plate, and I thought I'll just run them in to hold it in place. What was happening was the tips of these bolts was just going in and just touching on the gear and holding the gear back. And I pulled all this off and I re-measured and I mucked around. I thought, that everything's really good. I don't know why it's not working. And anyway, I worked out why it's not working. Lance put the bolts in that were too long and they were just, look, it was barely, well, it was half the thickness of that snap ring, and that's what was causing me the trouble. So I ended up getting the 2 bolts that were from the the 2 bolts from the detents, and they were a lot shorter, and as soon as I put them in, I bumped the gear forward and popped the snap ring in, and away we went. So there you go. I've never done that to myself before. But yeah, look, it was a learning curve, so that there, so it was a bit longer than it needed to be. There's a bit of junk on there. But yeah, and that was just touching the gear, holding it back, the thickness of the snap ring. So that's certainly something to remember. I'll just make sure. Yep, and that's in nice and tight. So we can undo these fellas now. The Loctite's gone hard, so that's not really what I wanted. It's going to seal the bolts though, isn't it? Nicely. So the next cab off the rank is this front plate, and the front plate, he just goes on the front there with the gasket again, and I'll just pop a little bit of grease on that gasket. That's all we need to do. So yeah, a little hour's job this morning. It turned out all morning. It's after lunch now. It's hard to get good help, isn't it? Okay, so we're just going to pop a bit of gasket. Got grease on the gasket, I'm sorry. Now, we'll pop a spring washer on. Seal the threads up. These will probably be a bit firm going in now, but that's okay. I might even put the plate on. God, I'm having a day of it, aren't I? Bring this other one in. And we'll tighten this one up. Now I can slide the brake shaft in, that's no worries. But the clutch shafts, for the clutch thrower head up here, the 1-inch shafts, I've not even got them made yet. So that'll probably take a little while. Oh, man. Right, so I'll pop a spring washer on each. A little bit of goo. But yeah, I'd never done that to myself before. So anyway, if I've done it, who knows? That's why I tell you about it, because if I've done it, there's a chance you might do it too. That's nice and tight. The Loctite will seal up the threads to stop that coming out. And I probably should have zoomed in there. I'm just looking at the monitor now. And but anyway, that's it for the moment. We'll probably come back and put some selector rails and things like that in.